Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third of our webinar series, Create Growth, Meet the Creative Experts. This series is funded by DCMS through the Create Growth D2 Hub, a University of Derby-led initiative to support the creative industries right across Derbyshire. My name is Darren Chouings, and I work as a media consultant in residence for the University of Derby, supporting their Create Growth programme. Today, I'm really chuffed and happy to be joined by Geo Law and Rob Lee, who are going to be covering how to scale your creative business. And they'll be focusing on mural art and large-scale graphic commissions. At times, the session is going to include audience interaction where you'll be able to use the Q&A function throughout, and you can use the button at the very bottom of your screen to pose questions as that webinar takes place. So as you hear from Geo and Rob, just make sure that you get your questions in because we will deal with those questions at the very end of the session. So it's important that you ask them as they come up. Please note that it's been recorded. So for anyone that is listening and watching live, you can go back to the video at a later stage to rewatch this as well. So it's really enough waffling for me. I'm not the exciting one here. We've got two experts. So what I'm going to do is hand over to Geo first, who'll be able to provide his experience and insights. And then we'll go over to Rob, and then we'll have a bit of a conversation between all of us. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Geo now and go from there. So welcome, Geo.
Hello, thank you, and good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to share my story and my journey. And I hope somewhere along the way that there might be some insights for some of you to glean from. As an artist, I've been doing this for the past 15 years, and I feel like every journey is different. I've listened to lots of different like designers and artists, animators, and all sorts of creative types of, of their journeys and like how they've got into what they do. And it is different, but hopefully when you see the work, you'll start to glean that like there are ways that you could approach it that could be different to me. But for now, I'll just do a little bit of an intro for myself. Next slide, please. So I go by the name of Geo Law. I'm a British-born illustrator and artist. I'm from the north, born in Huddersfield, lived in Sheffield most of my life, but I'm currently based in London at the moment. And a lot of my work spans across different media, different types from commercial illustration, animation, editorial, and murals, for the better part of the word. And yeah, I'll be showing you a little bit of a show reel, but also kind of explaining my journey, from like how I got into it from a youngster to how I am now. So initially, when you work on mural commissions, they're kind of the same as like any other commission. You have to ask what the client wants. Why have they come to you? And that always starts in the form of a sketch. So you gather as much information about what it is they're after. And then after a couple of back and forth of sketch rounds, you also negotiate how much you want to be paid for your sketch rounds as well. So that's a very good way of minimizing the amount of sketch redraws that you have to do. And then you negotiate your fee, or sometimes you negotiate your fee beforehand. It depends. And then once you've negotiated that, you work out a schedule when you're going to turn up on the day to do the work, how long it's going to take to do it. And initially, if you've asked all the right questions, like how big is the wall area and all that kind of thing, then you start working away on the mural. And then eventually, like you get to work on pieces like this. And this is kind of skipping ahead of my story at the moment because when I first started doing murals, they didn't look like this. And I used to do them all on my own, but now sometimes I get a helping hand to help with the coloring and such. But to get to where I am now, I'm going to kind of show you a little bit of the journey. So initially, we all have influences when we start off. uh, like our kind of creative path. And as a kid, big fan of Super Nintendo and Sega games and Studio Ghibli. These are all the kind of like visual media I was brought up on. as a kid living above a Chinese restaurant whilst my parents were working downstairs. And then later on, when you get through school, college, university, your style and your interests, they grow with you over time. I started to look more into Japanese art and loads of other different types of Asian folk art. But then comic books, graphic novels, street art, especially people like Keith Haring, Murakami, and Japanese artists like Hokusai, it created a very rich palette of interest for me. And I think like it's all drawing. It's all kind of based in drawing, and that's the basis that I've always kind of uh, I guess it's the baseline I always run to. It's everything has to start with a drawing, and because of these influences, that's where a lot of my work comes from. And as you can see, like everyone's journey starts from somewhere. Um, it's interesting. I put these slides in because I think it's important to show yourself like how far you've come. If you've got drawings from when you were a kid to the drawings that you do now, it's important to remember that you do get better over time, especially with something like any kind of creative endeavor, like if it's writing, if it's making music and drawing, painting, sculpting, the more you do it over time, the better you get. And you all have to start somewhere. And I think it's kind of important to remember sometimes if you look at another artist's work that's already like out there and you know it's taken them years to get to that. It's not just like, some people would say it's a natural talent, but I think it's talent that has been honed and crafted over time. And with this kind of like skill set that I had during school and university and college, it was always something that I was encouraged to work on. And uh, in school, my subjects went. I wasn't extremely clever. I did okay in maths, did okay in English and sciences, but I was a bit more of a dreamer. So a lot of the time, I'm just doodling away in sketchbooks, notebooks, on the back of menus and such. And with the style of work, it's primarily like doodles and characters. And in my early I guess in my the early part of my career, I would create designs for t-shirts and such. But then I'd be asked to draw or create artworks on a larger scale. So I started to practice this just using like A1 sheets of paper, A2 sheets of paper. And because I didn't have a table big enough, sometimes I just stick it on a wall and draw directly onto the paper whilst it's up on the wall. So I guess that was kind of the basis of when I realized I had to change the way I draw and change the kind of the wrist movement and the arm movement to draw characters and such. And this slide's quite important because when I was at university, I was studying a graphic design degree and I wanted to get into illustration, but I was in a little bit of an impasse because I didn't really know where my illustration work would fit in the future, and I didn't really know what it was that I wanted to do. It definitely wasn't graphic design. But then fortunately, an artist called John Bergerman turned up to our university to deliver a guest lecture, and I was really bad when it came to turning up for guest lectures because I was so kind of disillusioned with it all. But I happened to chance upon this lecture, and he showed us the style of work, but primarily he was a mural artist. But now he's a New York-based artist now, and he sells paintings and things for like thousands and thousands of dollars. But he showed me a pathway that I didn't realize was a possibility, which was to turn up at offices, restaurants, or shop interiors and doodle onto the walls. And that was kind of like where things started to spark from then on. So then after university, I go part-time freelance and I have a part-time job. I'm actually working two or three multiple part-time jobs in cafes and bars and pubs just to get past my student overdraft. But because I was out and about in Sheffield, you meet all sorts of interesting people if you kind of put yourself about there, if you explain to people what it is that you do. I used to get involved with live events. I would then be commissioned to do like random jobs like the insides of nightclubs and all of that kind of thing. And I would always document it as well. So we're talking like this is 2000 and what, 2009, 10. Instagram is just about coming out. LinkedIn is just about a thing. Facebook isn't established. Uh, but I'm recording all of my work and I'm posting online all the time to kind of drum up a little bit of interest, but also importantly to get some feedback. And then eventually I'd be invited to do events. So that's another skill in itself. Can I draw in front of people, in front of a crowd of people? And with the live events that I'd done before, it was a bit of a test of my own mettle and a test of my patience because sometimes you'd be drawing something on a large scale or on a board and you have to complete it that night. So and to navigate like talking to people behind you, sometimes people you've got punters like drinking pints behind you asking you about the work. And for all of that kind of, say, personal attrition, you start to develop a style and develop a methodology and how you approach that kind of work. And because I was being offered a lot of these opportunities to draw on large scale boards or paid for by the venue, it became very good practice for me when it came to like utilizing colors, paints, or experimenting with different types of paint pens. And so now we'll look at some murals and installations. When I approach jobs like these, a lot of the time, well, initially the clients come to me because they like the amount of characters that I can use, and a lot of my murals are very big, like doodle fests, almost like full of Easter eggs, characters, objects, and references possibly to the company. This mural in particular was for like a mobile games company in London, and thankfully it was the more easier jobs because they're big fans of games. They wanted me to include everything in there in terms of copyright law and such. This mural is an internal use. So there's no worries about that. Like all of these characters are all specific IPs, but I don't need to, get around copyright just purely because it's for an internal wall space, so it's not going to be seen in public. And interestingly enough, with as time has gone by, like I get flown out to certain places to produce murals. So a mural like this, I was asked to produce or create in like 4 or 5 hours in New York because it was a very last minute thing and it was pro bono. So L'Oreal owns Kiehl's and I was asked to, by my agent at the time, could I create a mural as part of a long-term plan? So they'll be reminded in the future that I'll get some commission work with them. And I worked out how to create this mural pretty quickly. I can put them up pretty fast. So, and then I created this in a day, and then months later, I got like a very good advertising commission with L'Oreal. And as I've kind of gone through like my career, I feel that the way I work is I'm used to how I work now. It's quite fast, but a lot of the characters that I use, you'll start to see similar characters used across all the different murals. It's almost like being a freestyle rapper where you have your library of like terms and rhymes that you'll always use, and you kind of copy and paste them into all the work. And I guess that's like the artist style. That's why people come to me because they want something that if it's going to be in the office, they're going to look at it every day. And it's nice if they can spot different parts that they didn't notice before, or they familiarize themselves with like this kind of crazy video game style level that I've created for them. And in the event of Facebook, like I feel that I've done quite a lot of pieces and murals for Facebook in terms for Meta. I've traveled to Lisbon for Web Summit to create live artwork for them as well. And I think it's nice when a client gives you full reign on what it is that you want to do. And that's how I position myself as an artist, as a mural artist, that people they see my work online and they they know what it is that they're going to get. So I get asked to do very similar jobs over an amount of time. One of my favorite jobs was I was flown over to Walt Disney to create this 30-meter mural. And thankfully, they wanted it to be something of like a doodle mural where it would encompass all of like the recent uh, characters from their 3D animated films. And now this mural is part of like their studio tour. It was just a basement wall that hides the server room where they have all these coolers and to cool down like the servers. And now it's part of the tour. So it was like it was a nice job because it became like a full circle thing for me where I was able to fight my own imposter syndrome and amongst a studio that's full of so-called imposters because they were all so humble about what it is that they do there. And yeah, I just wanted to include that one. And I think to kind of freshen up the work, it's important to try different things. So you might have noticed that I keep my colorways quite minimal, and that's purely down to client's preference, or sometimes it's time restraints, or the budget doesn't really cover multiple colors in my in for my style because it might take a longer amount of time. And I'm proud of this one. Sadly, this mural is not around anymore, but it allowed me to collaborate with two other students at the time that I was teaching for us to work together and to kind of like experiment with color. And this is probably the most colorful mural I've done to date. I also get asked to do live mural commissions now. So in the case of like conferences and such, if I've got like 4 hours to produce something like this, it requires a lot of a bit of preparation from the client themselves. Like they want me to capture a lot of the messages and the themes from the day. So they'll give me a list to work from, which I can revise. But on days like this, you'll get clientele that walk past you, and then you can add different elements to the mural as it kind of comes alive throughout the day. And these jobs are quite interesting because you get to meet a lot of people that could possibly give you more work in the future as well. And in the case of like QandA, I this was an interesting job because I had to create something that would be used for an activation for a product and a pop-up shop. So essentially, they wanted to create a selfie wall, and this was like not very art directed by them. I got to do whatever I wanted really, and keep to a very tight color palette. And maybe some of you, if you come into Sheffield, you might have noticed these like installation pieces. I like drawing on objects as well, and that's a skill in itself to practice like a kind of like three-dimensional style of drawing. Um, but yeah, I enjoy doing things like this because you get to kind of scale around the object that you're drawing onto, and it's nice to kind of see your work in a 3D space like that. Oh, sorry, a 3D object. And I get jobs occasionally from the States where I'm creating artworks for like, hospital interiors and nurseries and such. And what's nice about this is this is more of a digital piece. So they can kind of create things like print it out as a vinyl and things like that. And jobs like 2D creation or via digital means, they're nice to do because I can sit in the studio and I can draw on the iPad, perfect it on Adobe Illustrator, mess around with colors and things like that. But it's very different to working directly onto the wall because your eye reacts differently to your hand, drawing onto the wall. I wouldn't be able to create something like this unless I was using a projector and then tracing over, which is something that I might try in the future now. I have an upcoming job which requires a lot of detail, and to kind of capture it as accurately in the sketch, it's just kind of not really that possible because whenever I sketch a piece, it will always look different and feel different on the wall. For example, with this piece that was done for TikTok, I only had to send in a sketch, and other artists, like interior graffiti, style artists, were called in to map the sketch onto the wall and paint it directly as well. Whereas I would have approached this very differently. I don't think I have the patience to kind of to fully it's hard to explain, but the way that they've captured this piece from my digital sketch is that they literally just projection mapped the artwork onto the wall and then followed everything line by line. Every little wiggly line that I've done accidentally on the sketch is kind of on this piece as well. But I think it's great because they managed to scale up my work in a different way to how I would normally do it. You might have noticed a lot of my murals are all interior, so to scale up characters that big requires me to try it out myself, like kind of to expand my arm movements and such. And yeah, so in the last 15 years, I've got to work for a lot of interesting clients. And I think importantly, I've been able to work with these clients because good work does speak for itself, but also you have to speak about that good work. So that means using social media, using even emailing previous clients, setting up newsletters, using LinkedIn, updating your website regularly. But more importantly, I look at things like social media as it's kind of like the shop window. So you constantly update the shop window. And if people happen to browse by and see something that they like, then great. But also the power of word of mouth. If you do a good job and the client tells other people, or if they post it themselves on things like LinkedIn, it goes a long way. And so for anyone who would like to follow up and, get in touch or like look at the work or ask me questions and things like that, then you could always get in touch. I've always got time to reply to, anything about this industry because I find it really interesting and we're all here to help each other along the way. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Geo. That's really comprehensive run through your work, and I imagine there was a lot of photos that you could have shown that you didn't have time to show. Like it's a very big body of work. I was going to ask a couple of questions before we go to Rob, and then we get into a discussion later. But you you've spoken about kind of different ways to do mural art. So you've spoken about doing it live, doing it with loads of prep time, having to fly out somewhere really quickly and do something in a really small amount of time. Like, what's your preference? Like, what's your dream commission if someone rang you up, on any given day? What are you hoping for them to say?
The
Uh,
dream commission is always something that it has to challenge you, but also it depends how it depends how much you want it to kind of suit your specifics. So if a dream client says, "We love what you do, give us you," and obviously, secondly, if it pays really well, that was always a sweetener. Can't deny it. But I think for me, creative freedom is like the best thing. But then I know other people that would say some direction would be better for them as well. I'm in between. I don't mind creative direction, but I also love the freedom as well.
okay, cool. Thank you very much. And then this kind of goes on to someone else's question as well, but we first met, I think it was like 2008, maybe 2009. And you've done work for me previously, which is really exciting. But I remember at the time you posting so much work around that time and having, I think, the most comprehensive website I knew from anyone around, um, let alone anyone that had their own websites. Yours was full. And I remember thinking it was really exciting because there wasn't much going on in terms of Instagram, LinkedIn. You didn't really see much going on. And the question we've got from Natasha is how do you deal with today's competition? Because back then, you know, if you're active on those channels, there's not the same level of competition. But how do you deal with competition now? Has social media made it any more difficult? Has it made it easier to find work? Yeah, talk to me about competition.
I think it's a great question. I saw it pop up, and it's something I think about a lot. And I feel that like my competitors are just basically the same. Like, we're all alike. We do this because we enjoy it, and I feel that social media has made artists more available, and it's probably encouraged more people to get into it as well, which I think is great. The only way to kind of handle the competition really is sadly you have to find ways to stay kind of relevant to what you're doing, which means kind of keeping on people's feeds and all of that. But also the most important thing is it's not about standing out, but it's just about doing your thing and letting people subconsciously remember that you're still doing your thing. And another part of it as well is to handle, maybe you have like I've had to handle a lot of like my mental health when it comes to social media because I was on it so much and I couldn't help but compare myself to other people as well. And the only answer is you have to shut out that noise and just be you. If your work looks so different to all the people that you like and they're getting all the work, you could try and steer your style, but I would never do that. But I would always adapt. I'll always try and grow and let people in on that journey as well. But I think more importantly, with things like social media, it's quite hard because there are a flood of images on there, but you can still be discovered. You just have to let your work do the talking for you. And you always have to remember that growth is silent, so you don't always have to post all the time. If you're working on like ways to grow your business, you don't have to pressure yourself into constantly talking about it. You can always find ways to just work on it and then launch it, soft launch it when you're ready. It's a bit of a Chinese kind of approach, a Chinese cultural approach is to always stay quiet and work on your thing in silence. And then when you're ready, like do the thing. It's like being from Sheffield, really. Like that's kind of how we are in Sheffield, right? We never like to brag about everything that we're doing and like blow our own trumpets or anything like that.
Yeah, well, that's cool. And you saying that growth is silent, that is very apt considering this is a program called Create Growth, and we've never viewed it in quite that way. So I'm excited for you to share that insight. I'm going to go over to Rob now, but thank you for that time and that presentation, Geo. We're going to get into a decent conversation in a bit, but for now, thank you very much. I'm going to turn your camera off and come over to Rob. So thank you. So Rob, I'm just
Hello.
pulling you up now, and I'm really excited to introduce you to the audience that are on the call and those that are going to see this on YouTube later. But I produced this session because I wanted to focus on mural art and larger scale design work because I've always found it kind of awe-inspiring. But to have artists that have a different approach and when we're talking to Gio a moment ago about having to react to things quite quickly, and sometimes some of those pieces of work are rapid and some take time. I've always looked at your work as uh, mind-bogglingly complex. I don't understand how you do it. I don't know, understand how long it takes, and I'm excited to share that with the audience today. So if you can take us through your journey and give us an insight into your technical approach, that'd be brilliant.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Darren, and hi to everyone. Yeah, I'm Rob Lee, graphic artist and muralist from Sheffield. Primarily, we work in geometric abstraction and optical illusion on as grand a scale as possible. And yeah, I'm just going to talk as brief as I can about like my formative years and influences like school, uni, how it all kind of informed where I'm at today, really. So yeah, I've always been well. Now, if you can go back, sorry, mate. These I created in school. I was always a creative kid. Granddad, it was more from my dad's side. My granddad, my dad's dad. He'd like always be building little sculptures out of wood. My dad was really creative, but a structural engineer as well, and a bit of a workaholic. We'd have a like family tea, and when we finish, he'd just clear the table and bring out these huge technical drawings and start drafting. And I just remember as a child being really fascinated by that. Two older brothers who were really creative, but really into the music. They had a massive influence on me. At school, I loved like sculpture, modeling in clay, and still life drawing and the like. But like these drawings here, these were kind of influenced by, I guess, I was in my A levels, and it was around then that I realised it was graphic design that I wanted to do at uni, and it was more from a getting into a certain style of music, drum and bass at the time, which, you know, it's like 2008, 2009 era. And we started clubbing, you know, and the club flyers for this specific club night were all created by the Designs Republic. And I just, yeah, if you go to the next slide, I just absolutely fell in love with this type of work, the bold typography, the bold colours, like nothing I'd ever seen before. And yeah, it was like Designs Republic, you know, they're like globally renowned now. They kind of created a graphical language that everyone, it's like a base level, everyone copies it now pretty much. But then, yeah, so I went to uni, did graphic arts and design at Leeds Metropolitan Uni. It was a really good course. It was very free. You know, it was more like an art course. I got to dabble in many different forms of art, like, but preference photography and screen printing, and then like kind of digital art, and then into animation. And it was around then that it was back then it was Macromedia Freehand. You know, Illustrator has replaced that now. And yeah, but vector art, you know, there's something about the sharp lines you can create and how you could zoom in and in and in and in, and they'll always stay sharp. And that's what I loved about screen printing, is that you could create these really sharp images. Funnily enough, I was well into the course, but I was still really passionate about music, and I was like DJing drum and bass, and I love music visuals, and it took a while for me to kind of, well, it took the commercialization of drum and bass to kind of make me realize that's not my direction, and I'm going to focus fully on my course. But yeah, like music is my passion, and if you go on to the next slide, I started getting into other forms of music, a bit more underground, and you know, there's like music labels like Warp Records and Ninja Tune and the like. And I loved all the moving image, like the music videos. These show, well, the top two are like album artwork, but the bottom two are screenshots from this music video produced by this director called Alex Rutherford, and he did, you know, he did a lot for Warp artists, similar like Chris Cunningham as well, and they were really, really influential, their work. And it was kind of like this journey I was going on in my course. I was doing 2D animation, and then I started the third year, and it just seemed like a logical progression to go into 3D animation myself. And yeah, so if you go into the next slide, so in 3D, I was like building these objects out of many different parts, and then I'd kind of animate them building together and breaking apart. And I did, on the next slide, this was actually like answering a specific brief, kind of creating an atmosphere, like a bit of an eerie atmosphere. And this was this object that I had building, and well, yeah, it was like a music video, really. Next slide is a similar kind of object that like this, I don't know, spaceship or something. You know, science fiction was has been a big inspiration to me. So yeah, everything's linked. The next slide shows, it's like post uni. Basically, I decided like I wanted to be like I wanted to work in 3D, and these were like stills from visuals I did for Club Night the Tuesday Club. But I was well into my computer games as well, like Geo, and I loved like first person shoot 'em up. So I was really into the idea of being like a environment designer or the like. And so I spent like months and months and months and months learning this program after uni, Lightwave at the time it was called. It's not industry standard, but it just this program was just huge. I liken it to music production software. It's kind of like anything is possible if you know a 3D software inside out. You could have a dream one night and then recreate it the next day, but you've got to know how to do everything. And it was just months of sitting in front of a computer. I was on the dole to just learn and learn, but it just got too much. And it was around that time I realized like it's not my future sitting in front of a computer. I need a much more practical means to express myself. But yeah, I'd run out of money basically, so I had to get a job, and I got this bar job in this independent cinema, and I ended up there for like nearly 7 years. I worked my way up, and it was a strange time really. It was like I look back and it was kind of like the most normal part of my life. I kind of lived a bit of a normal life, and I completely lost my creativity. But yeah, it started to kind of it started calling, and yeah, I discovered basically stencil art, like street art. I'd never really seen it before. I'd growing up, I'd never really had any interest in graffiti, like standard tagging and writing letters. It didn't have any appeal to me. But then, as cliche as it sounds, it was Banksy that I discovered, and that just opened my world to street art, and I started passionately exploring all these different artists. And oh yeah, but yeah, the next slide, please, Darren. I started dabbling in it myself. I guess it was like links to screen printing days, and I just did these like pop art esque canvases. I sold them on eBay back then. But then the bottom three are like where I was actually exploring, applying them to actual physical walls and the like. And yeah, it was at this job. I was friends with the manager of the building next door, which was kind of like a workspace, event space, and there was this underground car park. And other artists had like practiced down there, and I asked her, like, I just had this desire to have a go myself. And so yeah, next slide. The top, yeah, the top one's basically the first mural I ever painted, and the one below it. And it was just this desire. I created these like abstract portraits of animal heads, all made out of different shapes. So there's links to kind of the 3D work I was doing at uni, and it was a mad challenge painting that first one. But there's just something about it. It was like I really felt like I'd found my calling, and so yeah. Next slide. I think it was. Oh no, it was. Sorry, these show also. It was a similar time. I discovered this more of like an optical illusion type artwork. It's called perspective anamorphosis. It's the process of like distorting an image over various different planes of perspective. So it requires a specific viewpoint to see the text or the image as legible, and any other angle it's all abstract. And did these in the room I was living in at the time with my mates. Every corner of the room I did one of these, and yeah, that kind of like opened up this real passion for optical illusion as well. And yeah, I was still in this job, and it was actually the head chef. Show the next slide. A friend of his wanted a mural in in a garage. So that one on the left was my first like actual private commission, and it kind of includes all three of this more like abstract, the graphical shapes, the tree, the Buddha head was a big stencil, and then the stripes are anamorphic. Like I projected them, and then you just trace the lines. The middle two was actually a little exhibition that Darren, our host, put on. I was exploring perspective work further. And the right hand side, this Nethill 360, that was first job elsewhere. That was down in London for this Nethill house in Shoreditch, I think it was. Next slide. And yeah, basically it just kind of snowballed from there. The left one shows this was like a Red Bull. It was Geo put this event on way back. It was the first time I met Geo, the Hantu Collective, this Red Bull curates, is it? Where you had to like paint up these little fridges. The Fez one, that was a nightclub in Sheffield. The green and blue one, that was like a private commission, and you know, it's many years back now, but that would, you know, my style is still very, very close to that. Again, Fez Club there on the right, they asked me back, which is always that's always something I kind of value. Like, I think that's a good thing. If your client asks you back for more work, then you know you're doing a good job, kind of thing. Next slide. And yeah, this work, all this page, this is like when I really started to go big. This was for this CAD's Creative Arts Development Space, their venue in Sheffield. I was friends with some of them, and yeah, they asked me to do this huge mural in the courtyard. And then again, they kind of changed name. It became this nightclub. It was called the Night Kitchen. And yeah, I did the club space. I designed their logo for them, and then created this big, like, floating emblem up on the wall, which really love that. Like the layered CMYK and lit in between. It was really cool seeing that, like at night, like glowing. And yeah, so you can see like the panoramic there. It was a large, really huge piece that. Really, really daunting, crazy daunting. You know, I remember that the ladders I had were these really knackered old ladders that were really wobbly, and you can't let any of this like put you off though. You just have to. It's just, you know, to coin Nike's slogan, you just do it, kind of thing. And the more you do it, the kind of, you know, the less daunting you realize. And you get into the flow of it all, and yeah, you just keep going. This left one was for a gallery in Hillsborough, part of Sheffield, and I've included that just because the pattern there in the bottom one, the yellow and green, that was really just kind of experimenting. It was to celebrate the Tour de Yorkshire, like the cycling tour coming through the city, and so I did these 4 cyclists, and then the waves, and I call them, was just like a way of abstractly depicting hills, really. But the whole this shadow tone and the highlight was really crazy to see how effective it was. It was, you know, made the wall look kind of 3D. The More Than Just a Department Store, that was a really challenging, well, ambitious project for this venue in Sheffield. I constructed all my own blocks. It was in this like the viewing windows of a department store, and I did 7 different viewing, 7 different points of perspective where you could view them outside, and where the words would form to spell out this sentence here. The Metro one and the one on the right, these were two London commissions. Really, Harrods. One of my first commissions was in Harrods. It was mad, but that was because one of my uni friends worked there, and she got me that. But I think I've got to rinse through these now. They're basically I'm just showing more and more of how my. The next slide, please, Darren. The left one, that's 2015. I was at Upfest. I applied for Upfest, the street art festival. I got into that, painted this little board there. The middle two was this completely every single side of a room for this escape room in Sheffield. City Colours there in 2016 in Birmingham. Next slide. Similar to Geo, there was this herd of Sheffield. I did this anamorphic piece on this bear, like two sides of it, so you'd view it from either side. The SHF, that was again one at the time my largest commission. To Learn to Be, that was for Chef Uni on the concourse. That was really effective. It had people like walking up to it and trying to stick their head through the wall. The monochromatic one, that was for Adidas, their HQ. That was probably like my largest client at the time. And Now Then, for Now Then magazine, that's become quite an iconic piece in Sheffield. Really good spot viewing. Like welcomes people entering the city from the train station. Yeah, and so then just as the years gone on, it's just working more and more with different clients. I mean, well, the top left one, that was more of a collaboration with the Shoreditch Gallery, Jealous Gallery. The lower one, Kirkgate Market in Leeds, that was done over lockdown. That was a really challenging piece, but that was this to kind of inspired by the interior of the market and to create this like grand entrance for one of the entrances. This is more like more of a poster project, working with this Jack Arts, who have all these different billboard sites around the city. Yeah, next page. The top and bottom left, that was really massive project for me, and like my highest grossing at the time. It was really big for this development company in Manchester, and that piece was the top left one. Yeah, a real challenge to paint, and it was part of this development, and working alongside all these different trades. Yeah, quite a challenge. The top right, I was lucky enough to get into a festival in Mexico, so I traveled to Mexico, this city just southeast of Mexico City, and yeah, I worked alongside like 15 other artists, but they were all Mexican. No one spoke English, so there's this mad language barrier. Like, I was really out of my comfort zone, to be honest, but absolutely awesome experience. Showing the now one then again because they asked me back because they built these like electricity charging points in front of the building which blocked him. So I came back and repainted it, and like it's anamorphic, so it completely hides the feeder pillar, they call it. Yeah, and just more large scale projects. This one's for the True North brewery, and they were celebrating the 30th anniversary. So I painted this mural, but also they distilled their own gin, and they released this special gin bottle with the label of with this design on it, which was really fun to do. This was a personal project right next to my now then one actually, which really, you know, this is my to be able to paint your own style. You know, Geo touched on it, like to be commissioned to work to create your own work is, you know, kind of like the goal. It's been my goal throughout my career really. You know, answering a brief, working in abstraction, you know, it's about interpreting a brief. You know, how can I answer this brief in my style? And I think I won't say it's luck, but I feel like I've oriented through my career, being able to work in this way and not necessarily like veering from my own style too much. You know, there's artistic integrity is very important to me. This was by far the biggest thing I've ever done. That's like 78 meters long for this music facility in near Pontefract. It's in the middle of nowhere, but it's called Production Park, crazy place. And yeah, I did this whole side of this factory. And if you show the next slide, it's the gable end, which that's like one of my favorite murals. That's like 28 meters and 9 meters at apex. Yeah, long. That took a hell of a lot of work. I always work alone, but with this one, I just had one assistant. But yeah, it took months, months of hand painted or masonry paint. Yeah, next few slides are just showing more and more. The next slide, that was for in Doncaster, working next to a school. That was, I did this talk to the school, these like primary kids, and every day they'd come out, you know, for the playtime or whatever, and shout up to me like, this was a type of a trompe l'oeil piece. You know, that's French for trick of the eye. It's like you know, optical illusion. It's using real world perspective to you know, create the effect of depth, and but it's really hard. Like you got to have the right kind of wall for that. Opportunities are rare to paint in this style, and yeah, really pleased with that how that one turned out. It was very effective. That was a personal piece. So I guess I'm just showing you all these images to kind of show how I feel like my style has developed and progressed, but you know, it's about having an identity. It's like a brand, and you know, being as original as you possibly can be.
Thank you very much, Rob. That awesome. Some of that work, and you know, the scale in which you're working, especially that production park work, is insane. Like I still don't get it. But in terms of like, we've got some more questions to ask, and I've got some as well. But I'm going to bring Geo into the conversation at the same time. But for you, Rob, when work is that big and it takes that long, is it still financially lucrative? Is it viable? Are there certain jobs that are so big they become watered down financially and you just get annoyed? Like, talk to me about how you negotiate on price when you're dealing with such a big load of work.
Yeah. Well, again, that one that was also a very it was very well paid, that and so yeah, the time scales, it justifies the time scale, but I would say, yeah, my work, it's been throughout my whole career, like it's a challenge. Like it's time consuming what I do. I'm a bit OCD with my attention to detail, and it's working with geometry. Geometry is in its nature perfect, so it's about getting this perfectionism. And yeah, like early on, I think that's one of the things is when I chose to become an artist, I didn't really know what at all it would entail, and how much, it's you're running your own business, like you're a self-employed um, artist doing absolutely everything yourself. And I'm terrible at business. It's like it's having the confidence early on, when you're not very established, having the confidence to quote a figure. You'd go lower to get the work. You need to build up your portfolio. And early days, it was like I'd be working for pennies, really. Like the reality of how long something takes, it would be loss making. But it's always it's kind of like a balance in it. It's like to create art, it's not about the money, but then of course in this capitalist world we live in, like if it's your career, you got to put food on the table and everything. So, but I think I've been doing it close to 10 years professionally now. It was 2016 I set up my business account, so that's when I kind of fully went professional with it. And yeah, I spent most of my 30s really, really poor.
Yeah.
I, I remember there was maybe once or twice I got close to considering maybe quitting, but I never like felt like I'm quitting this. But I think that's when I started doing it. There were other artists painting, and some disappear, and I think it gets too tough. You've got to be prepared for the lows. The highs are like higher than anything you can imagine. It's like the most rewarding profession, I, I believe. um, I and it's what I'll be doing till the day I die. But yeah, it's learning to kind of be okay with not knowing what's around the corner. There's no financial security really. But I say that, and I last 3, 4 years, it's like I'm living a comfortable life now, so it's like that's success, I guess. It's like, I can do this. This is my career, and I can make a living out of it, kind of thing. And it's the more you do, it's about, I still feel like a baby in it, really. I'm so far behind where I want to be, but then looking at some of the work I've done now, if I'd have known when I started that I'd be doing what I've now done, it I'd be
Yeah.
blown away, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Understood. And with you, Geo, like we're obviously talking about money and how fulfilling it can be financially and stability and so forth. But I understand that at one point your work drifted into editorial, so you used to do work that was not on walls and was in print. Like what does that look like now? Are you doing mural art exclusively? Do you choose to do other types of design work? Yeah, tell me about the wider portfolio.
Well, from when I started, I guess I never really put that much of I didn't put too much of a label on myself other than I always said I was an illustrator. But I was never really titled a mural artist. I was an illustrator that did murals. And so once you kind of identify yourself with that kind of title, then that means your artwork could go on anything. It could go on mugs, key rings, posters, and it could also go on, with an editorial. And then I think when I was getting a diverse range of commissions coming in, like, you've got your 3D sculptures and then you've got, murals and such, but then like little GIF animations and things for like advertising, like billboards and such, you start to realize, okay, it like I feel like this is more of a service as well as me being asked to produce artwork because sometimes the further you get into it, you work with art directors that, it's all in the word, they direct you. So they tell you what to draw, not how to draw it, because they get they bring you in because for your hand,
Yeah.
but they want you to kind of translate their idea and eventually sell a product. And so as a commercial illustrator, that is the service. So a lot of my work is probably like a ratio of like 60-40, where 60 is mural and then 40 is miscellaneous, which would be like social media campaigns, little mini animations, packaging. It ranges across all different types of things. And I think to get to that point was purely incidental, but it always comes off the back of me producing personal work, which are illustrations that I post online, illustrations that might tell a little narrative, and just kind of, I guess I did it because I wanted to push myself and just see how much further I could go. And I guess, like Rob said, like if you want to carry on doing this, you want to be able to make, a comfortable amount of money to live off, so you don't have to worry paycheck to paycheck, month to month. And so you find ways to try and diversify your skill set and push the usage of your work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Thank you. And just to go to some of the questions that we've received, because I wanted to get as much of your work shown, and what that's meant is the Q&A section is shortened a bit. But a couple of the questions that I can see that are pretty good are, um, in terms of medium and the tools that you use. Rob, you've spoken about hand painting. I know that there's some aerosol work involved with you both. Starting with you, Rob, can you define specifically what types of like paint you're using, what tools you use, any recommendations not to start with something rubbish? You tell me about how that works.
Well, I guess it's primarily spray paint that I use. I mean, yeah, I see the question. To working outdoors, often you get commissioned to paint. It's the walls are rarely flat. It,
Yeah.
you can be brick with, or really knackered walls, and spray paint, of course, gets in all the cracks. It's much more kind of efficient in that respect. Um, but then, I'll work with brushes, rollers. It all depends on what you're painting, really, like the application, the effect that you want. And, of course, spray paint is great for creating blends, like shadow effects, certain effects. You can't really achieve that at all as easy with brush and roller kind of thing. Brush work, of course, really good for really fine detail, outlining and the like. And with regards to kind of quality of materials, artist materials, they're expensive, and the I'd just recommend it's what you have to invest in, and you have to go with them with the better brands that are a bit more expensive, because the quality over cheaper brands is like, a massive difference. With regards to spray paint, say cheaper spray paint, it fades really quick, and you'll get issues with the cans and the like. Whereas the brand I use, I mean, I started with this specific brand, Molotow, Belton Molotow, and it's purely because they've got the more highest range of colours out of any other brand. They're like 250 odd colours, and I work with colours, so you need these different, all the different tones and the like.
Okay, thank you for that. And Geo, for you, what do you use?
Primarily with the murals, it's all Posca pens, and that's purely down to the range of color, but also the way that I use them as well. And I'm able to like draw quite quickly and have a consistent line over a longer amount of time when the pen is touching the surface. Um, I mean, would you believe when I first started doing murals, I used Sharpie markers and feel so bad for that. But I think what I got paid to do those jobs initially kind of reflected what was kind of required for the job. But I agree with what Rob says as well. Like invest in good equipment and learn how to use that equipment, and you're kind of like set. And when it comes to like commercial stuff, it's iPad, MacBook Pro with like Adobe Creative Suite and all that kind of thing. But yeah, Posca markers.
Right, thank you. And that leads me quite nicely to another question because someone's asked about industry standard for animation. Does it matter if you're using the industry standard, or does it just depend on who you're working for and what the preferences are? So from my perspective, I can answer that a little bit. So in terms of animation software, industry wide, you'd be looking at Maya, Cinema 4D, open source software like Blender is very good. There's also some brilliant tools, including WOMP 3D, which is a great 3D visualization tool that's completely free to access. But I suppose it depends on the job. And Rob, what you were showing earlier on in that kind of that warp records architectural kind of style, are you dabbling with animation software anymore? If so, what's your
Well, yeah, I mean, I still use for my 3D work. I still use this same program that I have
yeah.
I used at uni, and on this like really old computer, and I've been wanting for years to invest in Cinema 4D and learn that. And funnily enough, I have just worked. It's a shame I completely kind of forgot to add them to this the presentation, but my latest project was working with Visit Sheffield, and I worked with an animator, uh, and yeah, we created this new this branding animation, and it was all done in Cinema 4D, but with this like 2D effect to it, and yeah, basically it's something for me to. I really want to move forward with all that, like um, utilize new technologies. You've got augmented reality and 3D projection mapping and stuff. And it's that kind of thing is like, well, when I started at uni, I was working in 3D. And then I got into street art with stencil art, and that was like going right back to 2D. But then as my career's gone on, I'm adding these 3D effects, and it's kind of this whole cycle really of, the goal is to be doing all these huge 3D murals that all, the general public can interact with them, say, yeah.
Yeah, well, especially with geometric work, like you're saying, like technically it is perfect. So if you're using a computer to create it, there's no wiggle room there. It is what it is. So I can see
Mm.
why computers would be useful in your line of work. But I'm gonna have to draw it to a close now because I'm mindful of people's time. But I would obviously love to talk to you all afternoon about this stuff because it's very cool. But I appreciate the time that you've given me today. I'm going to take you guys off camera, so I'm just going to say thank you very much for your time. And yeah, it's a small world. We met in different times, I dare say a couple of decades ago now. But
Yeah.
it's a pleasure to know that you're doing so well with what you're passionate about. So may it continue for both of you. But for now, thank you very much. I'll see you around, and yeah, take care.
Cheers, Dan.
Cheers, Dan.
So for everyone else, I'm just going to put a couple of links in the chat, which you'll be able to see now. But just a big thanks to the University of Derby and DCMS for supporting these webinars. Um, we're here to support the creative industry in Derbyshire, and we hope that the breadth of topics that you've seen today have inspired you and driven you to do something new with your creative practice. Um, If not, I don't know what's going on. So I really, really hope you've had a good time. I'm going to run some exciting lounge music for the last time. And yeah, I'll see you all around. But it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Geo and Rob, for today. And have a nice evening and afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much.